The Fearless Organization by Amy C. Edmondson. Picture this. February 1st, 2003. The Space Shuttle Columbia is screaming back through Earth's atmosphere, a brilliant streak of light painting the morning sky. Down at NASA Mission Control, engineers are glued to their screens, riding that familiar roller coaster of pride and nervous energy that comes with every homecoming. But one engineer, Rodney Rocha, feels something else entirely. A weight in his chest that won't go away. Here's why. 2 weeks back, right after launch, Rocha was watching the footage when he spotted something disturbing. A small piece of foam breaking off the external tank and smacking into the left wing. He rewound the tape, watched it again and again. The grainy footage made it impossible to know if real damage had occurred, but his gut was screaming that something was wrong. So he did what any good engineer would do. He emailed his boss, requesting that NASA ask the Department of Defense to aim their high-powered spy satellites at Columbia's wing while it was still in orbit. His boss shut it down. Unnecessary, he said. Rocha felt that familiar sinking feeling of a door closing in his face. Later, when the senior managers gathered to discuss the mission, someone mentioned the foam strike. It was quickly dismissed. Rocha sat in the back of the room, silent. As he later put it, he was too low down on the totem pole. The mission manager was way up here. Speaking up felt, quite literally, impossible. That February morning, as Columbia dropped through the atmosphere, superheated gases tore through the damaged wing. The shuttle disintegrated. All 7 astronauts were lost. This isn't just a heartbreaking story. It's a warning bell. It shows us, in the starkest terms possible, how an invisible force shapes our world in ways we barely notice. The quiet, crushing power of fear that holds back our crucial warnings, our brightest ideas, and our deepest potential. And here's the kicker. That same force keeping Rodney Rocha silent, it's alive and well in your workplace, your school, maybe even around your dinner table. Today, we're diving into a book that rips back the curtain on this hidden dynamic. It's called The Fearless Organization, written by Harvard Business School professor Amy C. Edmondson. She's spent over 20 years studying one of the most powerful, yet invisible ingredients for success in any group, something she calls psychological safety. By the time we're done here, you'll understand not just what psychological safety is, but why it's the secret sauce that separates world-class teams from everyone else. You'll see how its absence has fueled some of the most spectacular corporate disasters of our time, and how its presence has powered the genius of companies like Pixar and Google. Most importantly, you'll walk away with a practical blueprint for building it, starting right now, wherever you are. Because creating a fearless environment isn't just the CEO's job, it's everybody's job. Think back to the last time you were sitting in a classroom or a meeting and had a question burning in your mind, but you kept your mouth shut. Why? Maybe you thought it was a dumb question, and you didn't want everyone thinking you were clueless. Or maybe you had an idea, a different approach, that might actually work, but you stayed quiet. You didn't want to be that person who rocks the boat or steps on toes. Perhaps you spotted a mistake, something small but wrong, and you let it slide. You didn't want to come across as negative or incompetent, calling out someone else's error. Sound familiar? Then you've experienced what Amy Edmondson calls interpersonal risk. It's a fancy academic term for a feeling we all know deep in our bones. From the time we're kids, we learn that other people's opinions matter. A lot. We learn to manage our image. We learn that blending in is safer than standing out. Nobody wakes up thinking, I can't wait to look like an idiot at work today. It's just not in our programming. So we make countless, tiny, unconscious calculations throughout the day, weighing the potential upside of speaking up against the immediate, personal risk of looking bad. And almost every single time, the fear of looking bad wins. Edmondson shares a story about Christina, a young nurse practitioner in a neonatal intensive care unit. Twin preemies had just been born. Christina knew the current best practice called for giving these high-risk babies a specific medication to help their lungs develop. But the senior doctor, a guy with a well-earned reputation for publicly humiliating nurses who questioned him, hadn't ordered it. Christina moved forward to say something, then froze. She flashed back to him tearing into another nurse just last week. She convinced herself he probably had a good reason. After all, he was the expert. He was already walking away, white coat billowing behind him like some kind of medical superhero. The moment evaporated. She stayed silent. This is what Edmondson calls the voice-silence calculation in action. The potential benefit of speaking up, helping the babies, felt uncertain and far away. The personal cost, getting destroyed by the doctor, felt immediate and guaranteed. Our brains are wired to heavily discount future benefits and overweight present threats. So Christina, like most of us would, chose personal safety. Luckily, the babies turned out fine. But what happens when this small, silent act of self-preservation gets repeated by thousands of people, day after day, in organizations where the stakes are sky high? You get a silent epidemic of missed opportunities, uncaught errors, and wasted potential. And, sometimes, you get absolute catastrophe. Which brings us to one of the most jaw-dropping business scandals of the 21st century, Volkswagen's Dieselgate. In 2015, Volkswagen was riding high. They were the biggest automaker on the planet, the pride of German engineering. Their clean diesel vehicles were collecting environmental awards left and right. They'd set an audacious goal: triple their U.S. sales and dominate the global market. Just one tiny problem. Their clean diesel technology was complete fiction. Company leaders had given their engineers an impossible mission: build a diesel engine that was powerful, fuel-efficient, and met America's incredibly strict emissions standards. The engineers knew it couldn't be done, at least not with their current technology. Now imagine you're one of those engineers. Your CEO, Martin Winterkorn, is famous for being a perfectionist with a hair-trigger temper. His mentor, the legendary chairman Ferdinand Piëch, once told a group of engineers they had 6 weeks to achieve world-class results, adding, "I have all your names. If we do not have good body fits in 6 weeks, I will replace all of you." This was not an environment where you could raise your hand and say, "Sorry, boss, but what you're asking is literally impossible." That would be career suicide. This was a culture built on fear. So, trapped between an impossible goal and a terrifying culture, the engineers made a fateful decision. They didn't push back. They cheated. They wrote millions of lines of sophisticated code, a defeat device that could detect when a car was being tested in a lab. During the test, the engine would run clean, passing with flying colors. But the moment the car hit the open road, the software would shut off the emissions controls, and the engine would pump out toxic pollutants at up to 40 times the legal limit. For almost a decade, it worked like a charm. Volkswagen's sales exploded. They hit their ambitious targets years ahead of schedule. But they'd built a castle on quicksand. Eventually, a small group of independent researchers uncovered the truth. The fallout was nuclear. The company's value dropped by a third overnight. The CEO resigned in disgrace. Executives were suspended. The company hemorrhaged tens of billions in fines. A 78-year reputation for engineering excellence went up in smoke. After everything came crashing down, one of the company's labor representatives wrote to the staff, "We need in the future a climate in which problems aren't hidden but can be openly communicated to superiors. We need a culture in which it's possible and permissible to argue with your superior about the best way to go." Without realizing it, he was calling for psychological safety. Volkswagen's story is dramatic, sure, but it's not unique. We see the same script play out at Wells Fargo, the American banking giant. Leaders set an outrageously ambitious sales target they called going for GR8, meaning every customer should have 8 different products with the bank. Branch employees knew this was fantasy. There's a limit to how many bank accounts and credit cards one family actually needs. But the pressure was crushing. Daily sales quotas, constant monitoring, and the very real threat of getting fired hung over everyone's head like a sword. So, just like those VW engineers, they found a way to hit the numbers. They opened millions of fake bank accounts and credit cards without customers knowing. They forged signatures. They lied through their teeth. For years, the company was celebrated as the king of cross-sell, another beautiful illusion built on a foundation of fear. When the truth finally surfaced, over 5,000 employees had been fired for ethics violations, and the bank faced over $185 million in fines, its reputation in ruins. In both stories, leaders confused setting high standards with good management. They believed fear was an effective motivator. What they got, as Edmondson points out, was a spectacular mirage of success that was always destined to blow up in their faces. They created worlds where it was easier for employees to cheat than to tell the truth. But the cost of silence isn't just financial. Sometimes it's measured in lives. Let's travel back to 1977, to a foggy runway on the small island of Tenerife. It's the site of the deadliest accident in aviation history. Two fully loaded Boeing 747 jumbo jets collided, killing 583 people. The investigation uncovered a perfect storm of bad circumstances: the fog, an overcrowded airport, a bomb scare earlier that day. But the critical failure happened inside one cockpit. The captain, Jacob Van Zanten, was a legend at his airline. He was their chief flight instructor, the face of their ad campaigns. In a word, intimidating. His co-pilot and flight engineer were both highly experienced, but they were his subordinates. And in the rigid hierarchy of 1970s aviation, the captain's word was absolute law. Eager to get moving, the captain started accelerating for takeoff, even though they hadn't received clear permission from air traffic control. The co-pilot, Klaus Meurs, hesitantly suggested they still needed clearance. The captain, clearly annoyed, brushed him off. Moments later, a garbled radio transmission came through. The flight engineer, Willem Schroeder, heard something that made alarm bells go off in his head. The other jumbo jet might still be on the runway. He voiced his concern. "Is he not clear that Pan American?" Captain Van Zanten replied with absolute confidence, "Oh, yes." In that moment, both the co-pilot and flight engineer went silent. They had doubt, a crucial piece of information the captain was missing. But they were facing Mr. KLM. They were facing the man who had literally certified their ability to fly. The interpersonal risk of challenging him felt enormous. Their instinct for self-preservation, the fear of angering their superior, crushed their training, their judgment, and even their own survival instincts. Seconds later, their plane slammed into the other jet in a massive fireball. The Tenerife disaster became a watershed moment in aviation. It led directly to the creation of Crew Resource Management, or CRM, a revolutionary training approach that completely redesigned cockpit culture. Its singular purpose was to make it safe for a junior officer to challenge a senior captain. It was designed to build psychological safety. This brings us to the beating heart of Amy Edmondson's work. Psychological safety isn't about being nice. It's not about lowering standards or avoiding accountability. It's a shared belief among team members that it's safe to take interpersonal risks. It's the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. Edmondson presents a brilliantly simple model to help us understand this. Picture a graph. One axis shows performance standards, from low to high. The other shows psychological safety, also from low to high. This creates 4 distinct zones. When both standards and safety are low, you're in the apathy zone. People just punch the clock, do the bare minimum, and head home. Zero passion, zero energy. When standards are low but safety is high, you're in the comfort zone. It's a pleasant place to work. Everyone's friendly, but nobody's challenged. Not much learning or innovation happening. Now here's the dangerous one. When standards are high but safety is low, you enter the anxiety zone. This is Volkswagen and Wells Fargo territory. People are under crushing pressure to perform, but they're terrified of failing or speaking up. This zone breeds corner cutting, cheating, and burnout. It might look productive for a while, but it's a ticking time bomb. But when you have both high-performance standards and high psychological safety, you create the most powerful environment imaginable, the learning zone. This is also the high-performance zone. It's where people are motivated to do their absolute best work, and they feel safe enough to take the risks necessary to learn, innovate, and achieve real excellence. So the question becomes, what does this learning zone actually look like in the wild? Let's visit one of the most creative companies on Earth, Pixar Animation Studios. Pixar has produced 19 feature films, and every single one has been both a critical darling and a box office hit. In an industry where success is rare and unpredictable, this track record borders on miraculous. How do they pull it off? According to co-founder Ed Catmull, one of their secrets is a process called the Brain Trust. The Brain Trust is a small group of directors and storytellers who meet every few months to review a film in progress. Their mission is simple: provide brutally honest, candid feedback. And the core ingredient that makes the whole thing work is psychological safety. Catmull is refreshingly blunt about their process. He says, early on, all of our movies suck. Let that sink in. The creative geniuses behind Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and Up start with something that is, in their own words, terrible. They understand that the journey from a bad idea to a brilliant film is a messy, iterative process built on thousands of small corrections. And those corrections can only happen if people feel safe enough to tell the truth. The Brain Trust has some simple ground rules. First, feedback targets the project, not the person. It's constructive, not personal. Filmmakers can't get defensive. Second, feedback is a suggestion, not a command. The director remains in charge and can accept or reject any advice. Third, the candor comes from empathy. Everyone in the room genuinely wants to help the film succeed. This process institutionalizes honesty. It creates a space where pointing out flaws isn't just okay. It's expected. It's your job. It reframes criticism not as an attack, but as a gift that helps make the final product better. Another crucial element at Pixar is their attitude toward failure. They get that you can't innovate without it. As Catmull says, if people are afraid to fail, they will seek instead to repeat something safe that's been good enough in the past. Their work will be derivative, not innovative. They separate fear from failure. They know that learning to make a great movie is like learning to ride a bike. You're going to fall a few times. The scraped knees are part of the deal. This embrace of intelligent failure is also central to another high-performing organization, Google X, the company's moonshot factory. At X, the mission is to invent radical, world-changing technologies. They work on wild stuff like self-driving cars and energy-generating kites. By definition, their work is incredibly risky, and most projects are destined to fail. So how do they convince brilliant people to work on things that will probably crash and burn? Astro Teller, the captain of moonshots at X, says they make it safe to fail. They don't just tolerate failure, they celebrate and reward it. When a team proves their moonshot idea won't work and decides to kill the project, they don't get punished. They get applause. High fives and hugs from their managers. Promotions. Every single person on a team that ends its project gets a bonus. This might sound insane, but the logic is brilliant. It's far cheaper to kill a bad idea early than to let it devour resources for years. By rewarding teams for discovering the truth quickly, even if that truth is, this won't work, they create an incentive to tackle the hardest, riskiest parts of a problem first. As Teller explains, they're not pro-failure, they're pro-learning. Real failure in their eyes is trying something, learning it doesn't work, then continuing to do it anyway. Perhaps the most famous discovery about psychological safety comes from Google itself. For years, the company obsessed over a question: what makes a perfect team? They launched a massive internal study called Project Aristotle, crunching data from hundreds of teams. They looked at everything. Did it matter if teammates were friends outside work? Was it better to have teams of all introverts or all extroverts? Did educational backgrounds matter? Nothing. They couldn't find any patterns. The smartest people didn't necessarily form the best teams. It was baffling. Then, as one researcher put it, they encountered the concept of psychological safety in academic papers, and it was as if everything suddenly fell into place. They discovered that psychological safety was, far and away, the most important of the 5 dynamics they identified. It was the foundation for everything else. It didn't matter who was on the team. What mattered was how they treated each other. On the best teams, members felt safe being vulnerable, admitting mistakes, and taking risks without fear of judgment. So this all sounds wonderful. But how do you actually build it? How does a leader, at any level, start creating a fearless organization? Amy Edmondson argues it's not magic. It's a set of deliberate, repeatable leadership actions. She breaks it down into a 3-part toolkit. First, you need to set the stage. This starts with framing the work. A leader must constantly remind people of the nature of their work. If the work is complex, uncertain, and interdependent, which describes most knowledge work today, you need to be explicit. Say things like, "We've never done this before, so we'll have to figure it out as we go," or "This project needs all of our expertise, so I need to hear from everyone." This simple act of framing does 2 things. It creates shared understanding of the challenge, and it gives people a rational reason why their voice is necessary. It's not just welcome, it's required for success. Setting the stage also means reframing failure. As we saw at Pixar and Google X, leaders must help people see failure not as a mark of incompetence, but as an essential part of learning. You need to distinguish between different types of failure. A preventable failure from carelessness is different from an intelligent failure that comes from a thoughtful experiment in uncharted territory. Finally, you set the stage by emphasizing purpose. Leaders need to connect daily work to a larger, meaningful mission. Why does this work matter? Who are we helping? When people feel their work has purpose, the small interpersonal risks of speaking up shrink. The fear of letting down a customer or patient becomes greater than the fear of looking bad in front of a colleague. The second part of the toolkit is to invite participation. It's not enough to declare, "My door is always open." A leader must be proactive. This involves 2 key behaviors: situational humility and proactive inquiry. Situational humility is simply recognizing you don't have all the answers. It's being willing to say, "I don't know," or "I need your help." When a leader admits their own fallibility, it creates space for others to be human too. It makes them feel safe, admitting their own uncertainties and mistakes. As Anne Mulcahy, the former CEO who rescued Xerox from bankruptcy, said, "Instead of people losing confidence, they actually gain confidence in you when you admit you don't know something." Proactive inquiry means actively asking good questions, not questions where you already know the answer, but genuine, curiosity-driven questions. Things like, "What are you up against?" "What concerns you?" or "What might we be missing?" A good question is a powerful tool. It creates a void that only a voice can fill. It signals, "I value your perspective." You can also invite participation by creating structures and processes for input. Think of Pixar's Brain Trust, or the listening sessions at Barry Wemiller, a manufacturing company that dramatically transformed its culture by genuinely caring for its people. These formal structures make crystal clear that input isn't just welcome, it's a required part of the process. Finally, the third and perhaps most crucial part of the toolkit is to respond productively. How a leader reacts when someone speaks up is everything. If you invite people to share bad news, then shoot the messenger. All the psychological safety you've built evaporates instantly. A productive response has 3 elements. First, express appreciation. A simple "thank you for bringing that up" is incredibly powerful. It doesn't matter if the idea is brilliant or terrible. You're thanking them for the act of speaking up, for taking the risk. This small reward reinforces the behavior. Second, destigmatize failure. When someone brings you news of a failure or mistake, look forward, not backward. The conversation should be about learning, not blaming. Your focus should be on what can we learn from this, and how can we do better next time. Third, and this might sound counterintuitive, you must sanction clear violations. Psychological safety doesn't mean there are no consequences. If someone is repeatedly careless, behaves unethically, or violates core team values, they must be held accountable. Failing to do so doesn't increase psychological safety, it destroys it. It tells the rest of the team that rules don't matter, making the environment feel unpredictable and unsafe. A fair, consistent response to a clear violation actually reinforces the safety of the group. What becomes crystal clear is that building a fearless organization isn't a one-time event, it's a continuous, dynamic process. It's like sailing a boat upwind. You can't point directly at your destination. You have to tack left, then right, making constant small adjustments to the sails and rudder in response to shifting winds. You try asking a powerful question, you admit a mistake, you thank someone for a crazy idea. Each action is a small tack, a slight course correction that, over time, moves the entire organization closer to its goal. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to be the CEO to do this. Anyone can ask a good question. Anyone can listen with genuine curiosity. Anyone can admit they need help. Every time you do, you're exercising leadership. You're making the space around you just a little bit safer for others to bring their full selves to work. Ultimately, the journey to a fearless organization is a choice. It's choosing to play to win, not just to play not to lose. It's choosing to prioritize learning over knowing, and to embrace candor over comfortable illusions. It's a choice that requires courage, humility, and a deep belief in the untapped potential lying dormant in every single person, just waiting for a safe space to emerge. As we wrap up this journey through the fearless organization, I want to reflect on why this idea matters so much, especially right now. We live in a world of relentless change. The challenges we face, in business, science, our communities, are more complex and uncertain than ever. In a world like this, the old model of leadership, the top-down, command-and-control style we saw at Volkswagen, isn't just ineffective. It's downright dangerous. No single person, regardless of brilliance, can have all the answers. The solutions to our biggest problems aren't locked in the mind of a lone genius. They're distributed, scattered across the minds and experiences of everyone in an organization. Today's genius isn't about having the best ideas. It's about creating an environment where the best ideas can surface, get tested, and evolve. Amy Edmondson's work gives us the language and framework to understand this. She makes it unmistakably clear that psychological safety isn't a soft, nice-to-have perk. It's a strategic imperative. It's the bedrock on which all learning, innovation, and growth are built. What strikes me most about this book is its fundamental optimism about human potential. It operates on the belief that people don't show up to work wanting to do a terrible job. They don't want to hide mistakes or hold back brilliant ideas. They do so because the environment has taught them it's safer to stay silent. The fearless organization, then, isn't about fixing people. It's about removing the barriers, preventing them from being their best selves. If there's one simple action you can take away today, let it be this: start with curiosity. Next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to jump in with your own opinion first. Instead, ask a genuine question. Something as simple as, "What's your take on this?" or "Help me understand what you're seeing." Then, listen. Really listen. You might be amazed at what you discover, and you'll be taking that first small, powerful step toward building a more fearless environment around you. Another powerful move is reframing how you talk about mistakes. Next time you or someone on your team makes a mistake, try saying, "That's interesting. What can we learn from this?" Shifting the focus from blame to learning is transformative. It converts a moment of fear into a moment of growth. That's our deep dive into The Fearless Organization by Amy C. Edmondson. We've explored the core ideas and the powerful stories that bring them to life. But I want to be straight with you. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the major cities and rivers, but it can never replace the experience of actually walking the streets, hearing the music, and talking to the people. If any of the stories or ideas we discussed today sparked something in you, I strongly encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. Reading it is an experience that will give you the tools and inspiration to fundamentally change how you lead and interact with others. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. And finally, if you found this journey valuable and want to keep exploring the ideas that shape the world's most successful people, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next adventure into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.